Welcome to the Happy Mindset, episode number 100. Today's the day, 100 episodes. It's been a while. It's been a long time podcasting to get to this stage. It's good though to get to like 100 episodes. It's an achievement in itself. I think to actually do something, commit to it, stick to it, and actually just complete it. I had in my mind that I would get to this stage when I started. I didn't really know how that was going to be possible because at the start I was very much just interviewing people. So I would have to always find people to interview, and at the start I didn't think I'd be able to get that many people who would actually agree to being on the podcast. And so I've been surprised over time that there has been a lot of people who've agreed to actually being on the podcast. Today's episode is called Practical Philosophy, and practical philosophy is a big part to how I persevered and got to 100 episodes on this podcast. So with the practical philosophy, I think philosophy gets a bad rep from philosophy armchair people. Armchair philosophers, that's the term. From armchair philosophers, people who just talk about things but they never actually do anything. So that turns me off. That turns me off anything in general when I meet people who just talk about things but aren't willing to actually put themselves through the process of learning what is the real world implication of this train of thought. So I've been guilty of this too in the past, and I guess to an extent I'm guilty of it moving forward, because you don't know what you don't know yet. I find there's different layers of understanding to something. So I might say something last year that I might have had like a grain of understanding of it, and then I might say the same thing this year, but I've got a little bit deeper understanding. So I think there's an element of that to it, but I'm talking more about the people who don't even try, who just have these philosophical ideas, and you can tell they've no idea what the hell are the real world implications of that. And so I think that turns a lot of people off philosophy in general, and I think that's a bad thing. From my own experience, I found philosophy to be very, very beneficial. I can remember in my more darker moments, it's philosophy that got me through it. Some of the things that stuck in my mind about the meaning we attach to things is completely up to us. I didn't learn about that in like a therapy session or anything like that, because I wasn't doing that to overcome what I overcame. But I read philosophy, and that was one of the things that stood out to me. So that's the lens of practical philosophy. Like, look for things, just read philosophy, soak it in, and just see what stands out to you. Like, you could read a lot of different pages and even a lot of different books, and there might be only one thing that stands out to you, but that really could have massive implications in your life. That one thing that I took from Stoicism, from Marcus Aurelius' work about the meaning we attach to things, that has a huge impact on my life. I think I've heard it from different perspectives, the same sentiment that reinforced what he said, but it was from reading philosophy, and it gave it credibility for me, because it's like these people lived through a lot tougher times than I'm living through. So if they saw the truth to this, then I'm going to at least entertain that there's something to that. But with the practical philosophy, I only believe something if I see it play out in my life, and I've seen this play out in my life. Like, from what I've went through, because I understood that my meaning that I attached to it was vital. That doesn't say that whatever happens is within that control of the interpretation of the meaning you take from it. But what it does give you is more peace of mind, that you're not buying into other people's perception and their perspectives of what you're going through. Like, when you realize that the ultimate meaning to what you're going through is coming from you, you're the one writing the story. You're the one writing the narrative to your experience, that gives you all the power you need to navigate the circumstances and whatever comes up. The stuff physiologically that I don't think you can control it. You can control the inputs, you can control your diet, you can control your exercise, you can control your mental health. Your mental health, like being mindful, being intentional with the thoughts in your head, will have an effect on your physiology, because you've less thought patterns, because your thoughts do affect you on a physical level. If you're internalizing them and emotional, like if you're attaching emotion to those thoughts, they do affect your body. So all these things have an effect. And so for me, it was philosophy that helped open my mind to this world, because before I would have seen it more of like I didn't think about the thoughts in my head. So when I didn't think about the thoughts in my head, I didn't realize that they were actually attached to emotions, which were oftentimes very overwhelming or very restricting or very like, it felt like that's just who I am. I didn't realize that there was thoughts in my head that were being emotionalized, turning into emotion and giving me that sensation. So without philosophy, without practical philosophy, I would be missing that whole layer to my experience that I wouldn't have access to. And that kept me going with the podcast too, because when you get no's or when you get people who don't respond to you, you can start to look at your own stories around, like, what does this mean for you? Like, why was I expecting a reply? Why does it affect me that they say no to my podcast? So that's the challenge to it, and that's how you can grow then. It's like you realize that it's not all about you. People have their own lives and they have their own priorities. And then as well, you can bring that back to yourself, and whenever you have to say no to certain things, you can get clear on the fact that, like, is this a priority for me right now? Is this moving me forward in the right direction? Yes or no? It's like, it's not a personal thing. Is this the best use of my time? So this is all how, like, the philosophical realm can help in a practical day-to-day experience, because I've lived my life where I didn't have an interest in psychology and philosophy, and that's when everything above my head, the thoughts in my head, they weren't taken really into consideration about how I was feeling day to day or the direction I was moving in. But when I got access to the philosophy and the psychology, and I took it seriously, I was like, because I'd reached a stage in my life where I needed a new alternative. I needed to break the paradigm of how I looked at the world. And so I had the reason to take things seriously. I was like, this is a new world to me. I don't know what to expect here. What I'm looking for are practical real world implications that can change my life from this world. And then over time, just soaking it in, it gives, like, a lot of times it'll give me perspective if I'm feeling down, or if I'm feeling like I'm not where I want to be. It gives me the perspective that I need to realize the world's bigger than me. There's bigger problems in the world, but at the same time, to not diminish how I feel. Like, I'm acknowledging how I feel. I think that's a really important part. When you ignore how you feel, or you ignore thoughts and you try and push them out of your mind, they don't go anywhere. I think that's a lot of the time how, when we speak things out, it sounds like a first world problem. But if you haven't acknowledged it and you haven't dealt with it on an emotional level, that can be just as bad as any other problem, because it's something that has a huge control in your mind. And when you really think about it, the worst problems oftentimes are the ones that purely exist in your mind. Like, it's a mental prison that you don't know how you get into and you don't know how you get out of. At least with physical problems, there's a clear, you can see what the problem is, and there's a clear solution. Then after a while, like, you can physically see the solution, you can physically see the problem. But with your mind, it's different. It's like, you don't know when you entered into a problem, and you don't know how you can enter out of a problem sometimes as well, how you get out of that problem. So that's how I feel sometimes, that first world problems that we considered. Obviously there's people as well who dramatize things and stuff like that, but again, if they don't look at the core, if they look at the core to why they're dramatizing things, then it would probably be, you can get some empathy with it as well, because, like, people don't dramatize things for the sake of it. Like, there's a lot more hidden issues going on there, because it doesn't, like, if you think about it in your own life, if you're getting something like you're getting overcharged in your phone bill and you've got this huge reaction, you're like, oh, you're like, fucking hell, like, I hate them. And then, like, that's the kind of emotions that come up. Like, if objectively you don't want to be feeling that way, and intellectually you know this is like a first world problem, there's a lot worse problems in the world than this, I'm over dramatizing it. But, like, if you knew that, you wouldn't get into that state. So then the thing with that is, like, how do you start seeing the underlying causes for that? And for me, it's been, a large part of that's been philosophy and psychology. It's been like, why am I losing perspective here? And gaining clarity around the emotion I'm feeling. So when I get something now where I'm being overcharged, I've actually been overcharged recently on a phone bill. When I get it, I still feel those feelings, that initial rush of, like, just anger and annoyance that, like, I was told one thing and then they do another thing. From studying philosophy, psychology over the years, I'm able to, like, become more aware of that quicker. like I'm aware of like how I'm feeling. Before I would have looked at the bill, would have gotten really fucking angry, and it would just continue to wreck my day for a while. That could continue for the whole day, depending on where I was in the past. Sometimes that could have affected my whole day, a whole few days. Like it would have been just a thing in the background that just every time I thought about it, I annoyed myself. And so I didn't know that was happening in my body and in my mind. That was something that I was doing to myself. I didn't see that. When you don't see that, you can't take ownership for it and you can't change it. So I don't think anybody who can get to the stage where they're aware of this stuff, they wouldn't do it intentionally. Like I've realized from my experience that when I can catch myself now, I don't choose then to prolong the anger and frustration. Oftentimes what I'll do is that I'll breathe, take a pause, and then see what occurs to me. I might just say I'll leave it for now. I'll come back to it again tomorrow when I've got a clearer head around this. Before, that would have never been an option for me. I would just dramatize it, and I'd say it to anybody who would listen to me as well. So when you think about this, think as well about how much time you're wasting when you don't have the perspective around the small things in your life that trigger you. And then think about even on the big scale of things. If you're being triggered by small events, how are you going to handle the big problems in your life then? Because the small problems are training you for the big problems that you're facing. It's training your mindset. It's training the perspective you have on things, like when you really have proper problems in your life. So that for me is why philosophy, psychology has been practical in my life. And I guess the advice I would give is just pay attention to your own experiences, in like, is this actually helping me in my day-to-day life? But give it time. Like it's taken a while for these ideas and these ways of looking at the world for it to sink in, because I've had to go through different experiences. I've had to feel different emotions to see the truth behind some of these ideas and these concepts, especially the meaning part of things, like that you're attaching the meaning to what's happening in your life. Initially, when I came across that, I didn't believe it. It was like, no, I was like, there's people doing things to me, and there's things happening to me that I have no control over, which is true. But I'd always linked that with a very specific meaning that I'd always given to it. I didn't know that the meaning was actually fluid in the things that happen in your life. So yeah, that's how practical philosophy can help you. It will help you to, if you want to choose a goal in your life, like for me it's been writing, it's to become a writer, to become an author. Podcasting came about, I think, because I just like speaking. I want to speak more. I want to actually find my own truths more, and I just want to like be more free in the way I express things and the way I experience life. I think that's how podcasting came into my life, as well as the intention of like just sharing ideas that I think can help people in their day-to-day lives. So just having some sort of practice where you're gaining perspective. You mightn't need to read psychology, philosophy. You might find it from somewhere else. It's just in my experience. That's where I found perspective in my life. But then it can give you the perspective you need to set a goal for yourself and stick at it for the long run. So that's just what I wanted to share today. It's I think without it, I would have given up a long time ago on the things that I do. Because I would have had a very specific meaning to the results I get. And it helps you to become more psychologically flexible as well in your thinking. Like, when you as well see that you're getting in your own way with the way you think about things, it objectifies it again. So it no longer becomes like it's just a part of who I am. It's just like, I'm useless. And you start seeing that there are stories you're telling yourself that like, oh, you're useless at this, you'll never get better. You're just like, after a while, when you start going through the experience, you're like, why do I keep telling myself that story? It's a fucking story. But you get that through experience. I thought that you could think your way out of this kind of stuff, but it's actually just going through the actual process of taking action on things. That you keep building on things. It takes time. Evolution takes time. It takes time, but you start building on things, and then after a while, like, you go through layers of like narratives that you're telling yourself that were actually blocking you, but it's through the experience that you break through those narratives. It's like being a baby. Just think about if you're a baby or like a toddler, or even from 5 or 6 years old. Think about the things that like you were embarrassed about with your friends. That as an adult or somebody, even a teenager, you'd be like, who cares? Like, know the teasing they do about like the different programs they watch, that type of stuff. When you're a toddler, like that's a big deal to you because you want to fit in and stuff. But when you get older, you start seeing that story is just a story. Like why would I be bothered with that? It's the same thing you can do as an adult. Like there's lots of adult stories that we're like children a lot of the time. Like emotionally, a lot of us haven't grown up. I didn't grow up until I made the decision I wanted to grow into an adult. Because it's on an emotional level as much as it is on an intellectual level that you develop into an adult. And yeah, I think it's a conscious choice you make, because I spent my early 20s, I was still very childish emotionally, but I'd no contrast. I didn't know what it felt like to be an adult. Like when you think about it, like when do you decide you're an adult? Like is it when you're 18 years old because you're legally an adult? Like I never felt a difference between when I was 17 and 364 days old and then when I was 18. I didn't feel any shift in me, in my mindset, in my emotions, to thinking, yeah, now I'm an adult. It's only been in the last 8 years that I've gradually been realizing, oh, I'm actually an adult now. Like I've been gradually taking more responsibility for my life. I've been gradually growing emotionally and intellectually. I've been intentional about all this stuff, and it's now that I'm starting to realize, oh yeah, I'm an adult. Like I think that comes from a conscious choice. Well, that could be a topic for another day. I hope that's been useful. Thanks for listening today. I'm very glad to have gotten to 100 episodes. For me, it's a big achievement to get here. It's taken a lot of intellectual and emotional growth for me to just even get to this episode. So that's kind of that's one of the main things that I measure things on too, is like, am I in a better place now than I was when I started this? And I feel I am. So that's been a success metric for me. That's been the principal success metric. That's why I kept going at this. So I hope this has been useful and practical. I hope it gives you an insight into practical philosophy. You probably are. If you're already listening to this podcast, it's a good chance you are already interested in philosophy and psychology. All I'm really saying today then, for somebody like this, is that focus on the real world implications of what you're reading rather than what you think you know, what they're saying in these theories and these concepts and stuff like that. Just look for the real world implications of what they're saying, of the wisdom that's there. So thanks again for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.